This happened quite a few years ago. I was a 21-year-old female college student studying abroad at a university in the Kansai region of Japan. I had lived a fairly sheltered suburb life until that point, so this experience really stood out to me at the time. I also grew up in a fairly religious household, although my parents were never strict about it, and are what I would usually call socially liberal Catholics. I had friends who had gone to the university previously, and they had introduced me to a nice Japanese woman aged around 45 to 50. I'll call her Kotoko, not her real name. It turned out that every year Kotoko hired an American student from my program to help her learn English. Her husband worked, but she didn't, and they never had any kids, so she spent all her time studying, cooking, and reading. With my friend's introduction, she had a friend who had worked for her the previous year. I agreed to become her next tutor. Kotoko and her husband were really great. I'd go to their house every Wednesday afternoon, and we'd spend about 2 hours on English, and at the end 30 to 60 minutes on Japanese. She knew I was slated to take the Japanese fluency test at the end of my time in Japan, and insisted on helping me, even though she was paying me around $50 a week to help her. We grew close during this time, and I went to a wine tasting with her and her husband. When my mom visited, Kotoko hosted a dinner for us. For around 7 months or so, we both had a great relationship. It bears noting that she never mentioned religion at all during this time. One week, we decided we would do a Saturday morning session and then go get lunch together. Friday night, I received an email from Kotoko. Although she had my email from the beginning, we had only ever texted, and very rarely, so it was strange to get one out of nowhere. Also, the email came in at around 3:30 in the morning, so I didn't see it until Saturday, about 2 hours before I was scheduled to arrive at her apartment. The email said, paraphrasing as it's been over a decade, "Are we still on for today, or are you still mad at me?" Absolutely confused, I responded, "Of course we are, and I'm not mad. I'll be there in about 2 hours." We had never had a fight or any harsh words at all. Less than an hour later, I got another email from Kotoko. The email described how she and I had had a huge fight the night before, and that she would forgive me and was relieved I wasn't angry. Since we hadn't spoken in almost a week, I was pretty thrown, but I knew Kotoko and I figured I would just speak to her about it when I got there. I got to the apartment and her husband was there. He was never there on Wednesdays. I found this comforting because I knew him well, so if she kept acting strange, I'm sure he would notice and explain about the situation. I sat down with her to begin our lesson. Kotoko's English was pretty good, but this day she had a really hard time pronouncing things. From the beginning, I could see her frustration trying to speak, as if she couldn't pour her passion into the words properly. She quickly switched over to Japanese and started a fast, anxious conversation about our fight. No matter what I said, I couldn't convince her that we'd never fought. In fact, denying it made her even more anxious, and she began telling me that I just didn't remember the fight because I wasn't enlightened, and others were convincing me I didn't remember. The lesson never happened. Kotoko got more and more agitated. She told me my friends, a few of whom she had met, so she named them by name, were evil and bad and dragging me down to hell. She told me I was sinning for drinking and clubbing with my friends each week. She was so intense and certain, I began to develop a real fear of what I didn't know. I kept throwing glances to the study where I had seen her husband, assuming he would hear her ranting and come out to calm her down, but he never did. Finally, since we weren't studying, I suggested that we just go get lunch. I wanted to be in a public space. Outside her apartment building, Kotoko grabbed my arm so hard, I thought it would bruise. She was a tiny person, so it was shocking. She looked directly into my eyes and said, "Your friend is going straight to hell, but I can save her." Lunch was awful. By this point, I had been listening to her for 2 hours, and the constant ranting was getting to me. She told me how my parents and best friend were already lost, but she could save me. When I just stared at her in horror, she revised it so that she could save me and one other, and pressed me to pick the person I loved the most, my mom, dad, brother, or best friend, so she could save us all from hell or the darkness. She went to the bathroom, and I started frantically texting my friend Kevin to come to the local station, because I was terrified. When she got out of the bathroom, she looked directly at me and said, "I know you're texting Kevin. He can't save you. Only I can." She couldn't have possibly seen my phone from where she was standing. Finally, unable to take it anymore, I blurted out that I couldn't choose someone to save, so I didn't deserve to be saved either, and ran as fast as I could out of the restaurant. At this point, she had convinced me that my parents and best friend had died or were somehow in danger, and I ran to the station, where I called my parents long distance. When my mom answered, at 3 a.m. her time, I burst into tears. I was so relieved that she was all right. When Kevin arrived, it took him around 2 hours to calm me down and make me realize I hadn't met a disturbing prophet, but that she was likely just mentally ill. I had never met someone who was in the middle of experiencing a mental break, and her conviction had pulled me right in, until I truly couldn't figure out if she knew something about existence and the afterlife that I didn't. The fact that her husband acted perfectly normally and never indicated anything was going to go wrong is to this day one of the strangest things about the soul to me. A few days after this incident, Kotoko emailed me to confirm our Wednesday session. I was petrified and only responded that I didn't think it would be good to continue, but I wished her well. She sent me many more emails and letters, and even sent a few letters to my parents' house in the US. None of the letters mentioned religion or that day. I never responded again. I think this experience is one of the reasons I later became an atheist. I just couldn't ever look at the ideas of heaven and hell the same way again, and they were always tinged with a real fear for me. I sincerely hope she got the help she needed, and is doing better now, but I really don't want to meet again. Just recently, about 5 months ago, my family moved into the house we're in right now, after doing renovations on it for about 2 to 3 years straight. The house is in a low middle-class neighborhood and needed a lot of work. After finally finishing it, we moved in ASAP and got all settled. It was very cozy, and the neighbors are all super nice. However, after about a week or two of being in the house, at about 5 in the morning I woke up and decided to go get a glass of water before getting ready for school. To my surprise, I looked out of the window into the front yard and saw a man walking back and forth under the streetlight. Creepy as hell, yeah, but after about only a few seconds of watching him, he looked up and continued on down the road. I didn't think much of this at this point. It may have been someone walking home or to another location, so I just dropped it and didn't tell my parents or friends or anything. Fast forward to the end of June. I woke up at about 3 in the morning to my dogs going absolutely ballistic. I scrambled to get them to calm down, since I didn't want my mom or dad waking up and getting mad about it. However, I looked out the window and noticed the same man standing there under the streetlight, staring at or into our house. This unnerved me greatly, and I turned the lights on. Almost immediately, the man started to walk away. My dogs finally calmed down, and I woke my dad up and told him about it. My dad didn't really seem to worry too much of it and told me to tell him if I saw him again. I agreed to this and went right back to bed. About a week ago, I was unloading a storage unit pod in our backyard. I was home alone and it was getting rather late. I wanted to retrieve my guitar case before I lent my guitar to my friend. My dog started barking like crazy, and I immediately went to check what they were barking at. Lo and behold, there was that man again, in the same spot staring at our house. I had three choices: call the cops, call my dad, or be a tough guy. My dumbass chose option C. I grabbed a baseball bat from my room and walked outside. The moment I opened the door, he began to immediately walk away. I screamed at him, "Hey, get back here!" In response, he started to run. Once my folks got home, I got a major earful, and rightfully so. My dad and mom called the cops, and they did the best they could with what little we had. They simply told us to call again if anything else happened, and went right on their way. Now, last night, I was getting home with my dad, mom, and sister after a night out with some family friends. As we pulled up into our driveway, there he was, but this time he was in our yard. The moment the headlights shined on him, he ran down the road. My dad cursed, parked the car, and got out with his gun. He stared at the man as he ran away. My sister, mom, and I went inside immediately to call the cops. We didn't know what happened after we went inside, but according to my dad, the man turned around and stared back at him for a while before running off again. I don't know if this guy will be back, or how long he's been doing this. I hope nothing spirals out of control, but we're installing cameras. My neighbor claims to have spotted him staring again. My dad has had enough and bought some off Amazon. I hope this stops soon. Cross-posting from when I typed it out ages ago. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I was visiting my friend in Budapest, who was working in a hostel. We ended up going out and drinking pretty heavily, and meeting these two girls. We hung out with them through the night, and offered to walk them back to their place. When we got there, my friend, who had a girl on lock, was like, "I'll come back with you tomorrow, Andrew." I just said, "Dude, you've got a girl that wants you to come up to her place. It's a short walk from here to get home. Just stay." He kept saying no, and I jokingly said, "Well, you can't leave with me if you can't find me." And I started running away. I was a pretty stupid drunk, but it was funny at the time. Anyways, I ran for a few minutes and quickly lost my bearings. I had an empty wallet and no phone. I just thought I'd wander, spot a landmark, and find my way home from there. Hell, if I had to, I'd sleep on the street. I was walking for about 30 minutes at this point, really extremely drunk. A car pulled up and a guy yelled at me in Hungarian. I just replied, "Sorry man, English only," and laughed a little. He was parked and I was chilling, so we talked for a few minutes. He seemed alright and said that he could take me back to the hostel. I said yes and went to hop in the back, and there were two guys back there that I couldn't see through the tinted windows. These guys were both super tatted up and very thug-looking. I was too drunk to run if they were gonna rob me, so I just put on a brave face and got in. I was starting to sober up really fast. They started driving, and I immediately realized something is going on. Basically, Budapest was two separate cities on either side of a river, Buda and Pest. We were on the Pest side with most of the clubs and such, and we almost immediately crossed over. I knew I didn't live on that side. I decided to speak up. Hey man, my hostel is in Pest. Why are we going over there?" They all just laughed and went quiet again. Finally, the driver pipes up and says, "Man, no one knows where you went tonight. What would you do if we tried to beat you up?" And they're all laughing. I checked my door handle and it was child-locked. I started to feign being sick and rolled down my window, slightly leaning out. The whole time they were talking, saying they could kill me and no one would even know, that I didn't even know where I was now. I just remember looking at my feet and saying, "If you guys try anything tonight, I know you'll hurt me or maybe kill me, but I promise I'll kill one of you with me." And they would just laugh. We kept getting further away from the city, almost to the point there were no buildings at all. We kept going back and forth with the threats when we hit a red light. Everyone at the car was kind of at ease, since they thought I was too drunk to try anything. I leaned out the window, grabbed the handle from the outside, and popped the door open. I fell backwards onto the pavement and rolled, and just started running as fast as I could. The car stopped for a moment, but I was shouting, so they just peeled away. It was around 4 or 5 a.m. I found some guys playing Pokemon Go. This was when it was at peak time, so there were a lot of people out, thank God. Of course, they looked terrified that this bleeding drunk man was approaching. I explained my situation, and they were super sympathetic. They called me a cab. I took the cab back to the hostel. All I had was 20 Canadian in my wallet, and I begged the driver to take it. He did. I got to my room as the sun started to rise, when my friend asked me what happened. Apparently all I said was, "I got kidnapped. I'm sleeping now, I'll tell you tomorrow," and passed out right away on my bed. I was around 16 at the time of this happening. Firstly, I'd like to explain what type of person I am, so my actions make a bit of sense. I'm an average-looking girl, a bit overweight, which for my country makes me really undesirable. For this reason, I'm not used to men hitting on me, or even considered it a possible occurrence back then. You can say that I'm usually the man in our group. You know, the girl who looks after every other friend when they're drinking, and if a guy is being rude or harassing someone, I'm the one to shut him down. I don't know why I took on this role. Probably just because my friends are way too naive and nice. Well, I'm like that to strangers when I'm alone. I always try to be helpful to people if they look confused or ask me for directions or anything else. On this particular night, I was going home from school. My high school is in the city center, and I take the bus home. Since the buses get overcrowded during peak hours, and I really hate being between crowds of people, I usually wait around 30 minutes to an hour to catch the bus. This night I had walked to another bus stop, about 5 stops before the one to my school, so I could kill the time and take an emptier bus. It was dark, and I was the only one on that stop. I usually don't have a problem with going out alone late at night. I don't have that whole man-bat assault mentality drilled into me. So I'm just sitting there minding my own business, when this 45 to 50-year-old man comes right up to me. He had a very friendly face and smile, so I didn't think anything was particularly off. He asks me something, and then I realize he's Turkish. I tell him I don't understand what he's saying, so he uses basic Bulgarian words he knows, and I somehow understand that he's trying to ask for directions. Of course, I tried my best to explain, and after I feel like he understood, I expected him to just stop talking to me. Nope. He sat disturbingly close to me, and started talking to me again in Turkish. I try to be polite and politely ignore him as best as I can, while I'm nodding my head with a smile looking at the timetable. For some reason, this man started asking me for my phone number. At this moment, I realize that this is definitely not only a lost foreigner. I try to shut him down by saying I don't have a phone. Don't ask why I thought that was going to work. I finally give in and decide to tell him a random number. He says something else to me that I don't understand, and then the worst thing happens. All this time I'm looking at the 1 minute the bus will be coming in. I'm praying for him to please not try to call the number. Well, he does right away, and he shows me and asks why my phone isn't ringing. My stomach just flipped. I tried to think of something fast. Then I remembered that I had my old Motorola in my bag. I usually brought it to school to give to the teachers who collected phones during class. I also liked playing games on it in 2014. Fortunately, the battery was dead, so I pretended that this was the reason the call hadn't gone through. I could see the guy starting to try to argue, but at this moment the bus came and I got on right away. I sat on the seat behind the driver as always. After 10 minutes, I started to get a weird feeling. I don't know what it was, but I felt like I was being watched. So I start to look around, but since I'm in the front seat, I can't exactly see everything. Luckily, our buses have this gigantic mirror on the inside that shows the whole bus. I look into the mirror, and I can clearly see him. He's sitting in the last seat, his legs clearly visible. I started to panic. Of course, I wasn't sure he was following me, but I'm also a very cautious person, so I couldn't just ignore it. I started checking for him at every stop, and he was always still there. I got paranoid and decided to say fuck it and get off the bus early. The stop was at our local mall, and luckily it was open until 10 p.m. I decided that I'd go in, and if he followed, then I'd know he was following me. He followed, all right. You have to understand that in my town, almost nobody goes out after 9 p.m., so the mall was very close to empty. I looked around thinking of ways to disappear on him, but there was just no way. The mall is a wide open space, and there are 3 floors, almost empty. It'd be easy to spot me anywhere. Now you'll probably think at this point, you should have asked the security for help. No. In Bulgaria, we don't really do that. That literally never even went through my mind. And besides, the security there is just some old grandpa that walks around all day. He doesn't even actually do work or anything. If it were today, I might not be as stupid. But back then, this wasn't even an option that I considered. Besides, the security wasn't even around. So I do the most logical thing I can do. I decided to use the knowledge I had acquired the previous week. You see, the mall had a cool corridor system behind the stores. It was completely unmarked by any signs, and if you didn't know where you were going, you'd probably get lost, because it's just endless white corridors that lead to empty rooms for storage or other things. Well, me, being an avid anime fan, loved going around these corridors and pretending to be a ninja. 16-year-olds, am I right? So I can proudly say that I learned the right path to the back stairway of the mall. Because I was smart and obsessed with the idea of being a spy, I decided to lure the creepy man into the corridors and then go out from the back end of the mall. I first encountered him and pretended to look around, just to see if he was really stalking me. He didn't even try to hide it. He just stood right outside the store staring right at me. I got scared for a second, but then I remembered that I was the best 007 agent out there, so I continued walking around the mall. I finally entered the back corridors, and at this point I booked it to the staircase. I ran right out, and didn't stop running for about 2 bus stops. I looked back, but there was no one there, so I proudly decided that I was a hero and went home. Today, being a 21-year-old grown-up, I think about how stupid that all was, and how I'd probably be 10 times as scared today than I was back then. But I hope it never comes to that. I have a lot of other creepy things that have happened to me, so one day I might get around to writing the rest. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. As always, be sure to let me know what you guys think, and please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. I know some people have also had some problems about videos not appearing in their sub box, so please make sure to hit that little bell if you guys want to always be notified of when my next video comes out. As always, links to all of my social media will be in the description of the video below. You can find links to my Twitter, Gmail, Twitch, and Facebook accounts. So if you guys ever want to talk to me, just go ahead and shoot me a message on any of those, and I'll try to respond to your message as soon as possible. I'm also going to start trying to stream on Twitch a little bit more, so if you guys have notifications on there, you'll be notified right away when I go live. I might also try to do some on YouTube, but I haven't decided yet. I'm still kind of trying to decide what kind of streams I want to do. Anyways, if you guys have a story you would like to send in, or if you have a story you would like to suggest that I read, go ahead and send me a message on any of those links in the description below. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the title, how you would like to be credited, and any genres that the story might have, if it does have one. If you guys are curious about the music used in this video, go ahead and take a look in the description below as well. I always put all of the music in the order in which it appears in the video, and I also have links to the artists as well. Last but not least, I also have a Patreon if you guys feel like you want to contribute to the channel a little bit. But of course, as always, it is never required, and you will never have to pay for watching any of my videos. So that's just something you do if you feel like it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and please be sure to leave your feedback in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you very much.